G'day, it's fugitive Australian journalist Shane Dowling from the website and YouTube channel Kangaroo Court of Australia. Now, the last couple of weeks, Prime Minister Anthony Albanese has been busted trying to control the media, manipulate the media, even locking the media out in the Pacific Islands. And because of that, this is probably one of the most important videos I've ever published because it shows the Prime Minister of the country manipulating and controlling the narrative of what the media report and what they can and can't report. Now, to show you that, I'm going to play you 3 videos. And the first video is President Donald Trump. Today, he's been videoed threatening an Australian journalist, John Lyons, from the Four Corners show on the ABC. Now, the ABC ran a story on it, and within that story, they talk about Donald Trump and how he tries to manipulate the media and threaten the media and suing the media. And you can compare that to the second video, which is Prime Minister Anthony Albanese locking out the media in the Pacific Islands, locking out their local media, not the Australian media. They were allowed to interview him at a press conference, but he locked out the local media. Why? Because you can't control the local media. And the second video is a video I did of my article from last week in relation to Albanese colluding with the Australian media and directing what they can and can't say in articles. And within that article, I also talk about the new media bargaining code, where the government leans on technology companies like Google and Facebook to pay the old media companies. So they're in cahoots together. Now, I'll show you the video of Donald Trump having a run-in with Australian journalist John Lyons today, and the ABC story they ran on it, where they discussed President Donald Trump and the overall surrounding issues there in America in relation to him and his relationship with the media, because it's not too different to Anthony Albanese's relationship with the media here in Australia, where he's trying to control them. The only real difference is that Donald Trump has started to sue the media in America. You can't say it won't happen here because former Prime Minister Bob Hawke was well known for suing the media. Now, I'll show you that video now of Donald Trump threatening John Lyons.
There's been an extraordinary moment at the White House where Donald Trump and an ABC journalist have been involved in a bit of a back and forth in the grounds of the White House. It is a pretty good bit of TV. Here is exactly what happened on the grounds of the White House.
But is it appropriate, President Trump, that a president in office should be engaged in so much business activity?
Well, I'm really not. My kids are running the business.
But
I'm here.
you are also...
You know what the activity, where are you from?
I'm from the Australian Broadcasting Corporation,
okay.
Four Corners program.
Well, the Australians, you're hurting Australia, right? In my opinion, you are hurting Australia very much right now. But they want to get along with me. You know, your leader is coming over to see me very soon. I'm going to tell him about you. You set a very bad tone.
Well,
go ahead, John.
Trump, when the UAE does a deal like that,
you can set a nicer tone.
When the UAE does a deal, what does it want in return?
Quiet.
Our America's editor, John Lyons, the one and only John Lyons, joins us now for more. Now, John, good morning. You were asking the president some questions. What was the context to all of this?
Well, James, we are researching a Four Corners program which is looking at Donald Trump and his family, their money, their investments. No other president before Donald Trump has had so much business activity in office in the 7 months since he's been returned. And it looks like the family wealth in that time has increased by some billions of dollars. And so the Four Corners program is looking at that increase in wealth. And so I came along this morning to ask President Trump, before he headed to the UK to meet the King, 2 or 3 of those questions on that. He began reasonably friendly manner when I said to him, generally you're seen as the wealthiest man to have had this office. He liked that part of it. He said, I hope so. But then when I asked him about how much wealthier he is now than he was when he came to office, the situation began to deteriorate to the point where, in the end, he sort of shouted to me to be quiet.
And John, there's a snippet of news in that, right? Now, we knew that there was going to be this meeting between Anthony Albanese and Donald Trump at some point. Donald Trump, in between saying that he's going to dob on you to the Prime Minister, effectively confirming there, I think, that there is going to be a face-to-face meeting pretty soon.
That's right, James. He more or less said it is going to happen. But he also, when he said hurting Australia's interests in the context of that visit, there was almost a hint there of possible retribution or retaliation, apart from the fact he said he's going to tell on me to Prime Minister Albanese. I'm not quite sure what he expects Prime Minister Albanese to do in terms of once he's been told on me. But there's a suggestion there too that it might damage relations between the US and Australia, which I think is an absurd notion, that 2 or 3 questions, legitimate questions, to the most powerful person in the world. If our job as journalists is to hold truth to power, then surely asking legitimate questions politely to the President of the United States should be acceptable. But in this day and age in America now, it's not. And we can see even yesterday Donald Trump announced he's suing the New York Times to the tune of $15 billion. So I think all this feeds into President Trump's sort of war on the media.
Yeah, we're going to keep asking the questions, aren't we, John? Just before I let you go, you're outside the gates of the White House at the moment. Are you welcome back inside?
Look, I hope so, James. For me, it was just a perfectly sort of normal thing to do, to ask questions that I don't think are provocative. I think are fair, are based on research. They were not asked in an abusive fashion. And if we've reached the point where asking those sort of questions prevents you from going into the White House, then I think it's a very dark day. I don't think we've yet reached that point, though.
Now, this next video is Media Watch from Monday, the 15th of September 2025. A story about Prime Minister Anthony Albanese, who's been in the Pacific Islands over the last few days, and where he locked out the local media because he can't control them. So I'll show you that video now.
Touchdown in Honiara. The warm Pacific greeting contrasting with the power contest in the region.
Hello, I'm Linton Besser. Welcome to Media Watch. And tonight, Australia's Pacific Charm Offensive, the Prime Minister's bid to supplant the seductions of China with warm words of solidarity and fellowship.
The Pacific family values the fact that we are family and that we need to look after each other's interests.
Anthony Albanese might have suffered the odd diplomatic setback from selecting the wrong wardrobe to last-minute wobbles from Vanuatu about a $500 million Australian proposal for a security and economic partnership. But he also delivered good news to the people of the Pacific on that most urgent of issues, climate change.
Australia to contribute $100 million towards a new climate resilience fund.
This is more than a fund, though. It's a promise to Pacific communities.
Warming once more to his theme of common kinship.
Australia is a proud member of the Pacific family.
But hang on, was the Pacific Island press there to hear it? Ah, they were in prime position on the other side of the door. Yes, the warm bosom of family. As Solomon Islands journo Ronald Toyotona explained,
we asked to be part of the press conference, but then they said, oh no, this one is for the Australian journalists only.
The snub prompted much gnashing of teeth from the very people Albanese might have used to promote his message of friendship and common interest.
Australia blocks Pacific journalists, undermines media freedom.
And earned the PM a stinging rebuke from one of the leading voices for press freedom in the Pacific.
You cannot claim to be part of the Pacific family while silencing Pacific voices. You cannot talk about partnership while blocking our journalists from doing their jobs.
So why wasn't the region's media, bar a single Aussie who writes for a Pacific masthead, allowed into the room? One journalist, Stefan Armbruster, tried to get to the bottom of it and received a warm response.
Is there a reason why Pacific journalists can't go to your press conferences?
I've no idea what you're talking about, mate.
The PM didn't answer our questions either, but we did hear the complaints prompted great frustration among his minders because they believe that an Australian Prime Minister who routinely makes himself available to Australian journalists, who, by the way, pay substantial costs to tail him into the Pacific, owes little obligation to do likewise for their foreign counterparts, not even when Australia is seeking to play a leadership role in the region. And it's not the first time this has happened. In 2017, Papua New Guinea's media pack was barred from a joint press conference hosted by Malcolm Turnbull and his counterpart Peter O'Neill. Last week's repeat episode has now cast a pall over the image of democratic beneficence Australia wishes to project.
When we have the Australian Prime Minister not treating us as a family, that's a big deal for us because family means connection.
Officials might only acknowledge it in whispers, but of course Albanese's traipse through the Pacific, tax dollars in tow, was all about cautioning our neighbours as to the beguiles of Beijing, whose leaders, it must be said, would not in a million years deign to hold a press conference in a modest little room in Honiara. But if Canberra, which already bankrolls billions of dollars worth of regional security and development assistance, wants to be seen as a force for good in the Pacific, it might want to hold the door open just a beat or two longer.
Now, the video I'm about to show you now is a video I accidentally deleted the other day. I was mucking around, but it's from the article last week in relation to Anthony Albanese, in effect co-authoring articles with the Canberra media. He's got them on the drip, where his staff basically dictate what the journalists can and can't say. I'll show you that video now, but remember, put all three videos I've just showed you together, and it tells a damning story in relation to Anthony Albanese. And I play the Donald Trump one just so you can compare what Donald Trump's doing to what Albanese is doing, and it's not greatly different in relation to them trying to manipulate the media for their own benefit. I'll show you that video now. Now, Australian Prime Minister Anthony Albanese was busted on Media Watch on Monday night, directing journalists in Canberra, telling them what they can and can't say in relation to certain stories. But there's a lot more to the story than what Media Watch reported. It's also Anthony Albanese's relationship with the CEO of the media companies that's relevant, because those CEOs are trying to get as much money as they can out of the federal government. So in return, they're obviously making sure those journalists in Canberra do what the Australian Prime Minister says to do. And I'll be publishing an article on the issue on Friday the 12th of September 2025. And I'll read out that article. And I'll also show you the video of Monday night's Media Watch, the 7 minutes or so, where they expose Anthony Albanese's office, directing the journalists what they can and can't write. Now, the article will be up on my website, Kangaroo Court of Australia, tomorrow, and it's titled, How Anthony Albanese's Office Secretly Co-Authors Media Stories for 9, 7, 10 and News Corp, etc. And the article starts off, Prime Minister Anthony Albanese was exposed controlling Canberra journalists to publish his propaganda on Media Watch on Monday, the 8th of September 2025, but that is only half the story. What is even more disturbing is that Anthony Albanese also controls Australia's old media CEOs and directors by keeping them cashed up via the News Media Bargaining Code, which shakes down global tech platforms such as Google and Facebook for hundreds of millions of dollars. As it currently stands, Anthony Albanese's office is in effect co-authoring many articles being published in writing and on TV with Australia's old media. It's pure political propaganda, which is badged with the old media's logos and then fed to the public as news. And there is a paper trail exposed by Media Watch which proves it. The Media Watch show was very damaging to Albanese, showing his office controls journalists, but it would have been even more damaging if it showed the full story, which includes Albanese's control of media CEOs, and that's what I'll do in this video. Firstly, I'll outline Albanese's control of media CEOs and then show you Albanese's control of Canberra journalists as exposed by Media Watch. On Tuesday, the 2nd of September 2025, the Prime Minister Anthony Albanese and the leaders of 7, 9 and 10 and a who's who of TV talent showed up at Parliament House for an event hosted by Free TV, which represents the interests of free-to-air commercial broadcasters and is lobbying the government for 5 key changes to current legislation and government support. Now, the picture up on screen now is Free TV's Bridget Fair, Win's Andrew Lancaster, Network 10's Beverly McGarvey, Prime Minister Anthony Albanese, 9's Matt Stanton and 7's Jeff Howard. And the article goes on to say, Umbrella website published an article on the 3rd of September 2025 titled, My Government's Got Your Back and We Will Not Give In to the Platforms. Albo tells TV networks he's picked a side, which starts off, Prime Minister Anthony Albanese has assured Australia's TV networks that the government will stand up for them in their battle with the global platforms. Speaking at a showcase event held at Parliament House in Canberra last night, Albanese told the room full of free-to-air TV executives, My government has your back. We will not give in to some of the platforms when the pressure comes on, which it will, of everything from the Media Bargaining Code to other things including positioning when people turn on their TVs, anti-siphoning laws, etc. The shopping list of the TV industry's 5 key policy requests. Number 1, to no longer have to pay to access public broadcast spectrum, which costs the industry collectively about $50 million a year. Number 2, to revisit the updated anti-siphoning legislation. Number 3, more help for regional broadcasting. Number 4, ensuring any betting ad bans apply to all media and that broadcasters get extra financial assistance. Number 5, a new tax policy offering media companies a tax perk for new jobs. Communications Minister Annika Wells, who also spoke at the event, was asked by Mumbrella about 3 of the industry's requests around reducing the licence fee, revisiting the anti-siphoning law, and getting on with the news bargaining incentive. She told Mumbrella, "I am pleased to say we're working on all these things." B&T website published an article on the 3rd of September 2025 titled 7, 9 and 10 bosses shared top priorities and welcome Albo's We've Got Your Back pledge, which starts off, Australia's free-to-air commercial TV bosses have praised Prime Minister Anthony Albanese's promise that the government would support the commercial TV industry and protect its interests against global tech platforms. And I go on to say in the article, as you can see above, the old media TV networks, with 9 and 7 also owning newspapers, are lobbying the government heavily for political decisions in their favour, which can and will have a huge impact on their finances and profitability, and possibly survival as a going concern in the future. Albanese has made it very clear that he will support the TV networks, but of course Albanese wants something in return, and that's where we come to Albanese's office being exposed for directing journalists on what they can and can't say and when. Albo's control of old media Canberra journalists. On Monday, the 8th of September 2025, the ABC's Media Watch published a story titled No Journalism Today, as per below. It shows how Albanese's office directs Canberra journalists on what they can say and can't say on stories such as the kids' social media ban. Many, if not most, Canberra journalists are on the drip, where they are fed stories by the Prime Minister's office, and if they don't fall into line, they can be booted from the drip, which makes their lives as journalists harder. At the 2-minute and 45-second mark of the video I'm about to show you, the drip is referred to as the drop. And I'll show you the Media Watch show now. It's well worth watching because it shows you what it really happens in Canberra with the journalists. I'll show you that now.
And now to a cheery development for the Albanese government earlier this month in its world-first attempt to block kids from social media.
Technology designed to check the age of social media users is effective. A government-backed trial has concluded.
The report found that age assurance for social media use in Australia could be done privately, efficiently and effectively.
The nation's newspapers earnestly reporting a much-anticipated government-backed review of the technology that might be used to stop children logging into those nefarious social media platforms, with good news all round.
Communications Minister Annika Wells said,
The Albanese government is on the side of families.
The report did identify important caveats, which several reporters were careful to include, like the potential for privacy breaches. But doesn't so complex a review into so complex a policy require the analysis of independent experts? Strangely, there was none in any of these stories. It was a similar case back in September 2024 when the Albanese government first revealed its plan to legislate a social media ban.
The Prime Minister on Tuesday will commit to introducing world-leading legislation to protect children from digital harm.
Yet again, in these stories, there was no quoting of dissenting voices, no quoting of interest groups, and no quoting of technical experts. And why might that be? Maybe because the formidable parliamentary press gallery was told it wasn't permitted to do so. And from whom did these marching orders come? Would you believe it? The government itself.
Hi everyone. Tomorrow the Prime Minister will announce the Albanese government will introduce legislation this term to enforce a minimum age for access to social media.
Strictly embargoed until 10:30 p.m. No third-party comment.
Which means no one else is to be quoted. Fast forward 11 months when the PM decided YouTube deserved to be banned too, another friendly missive arrived in press gallery mailboxes from on high.
under embargo with no third party or opposition comment until 10:30 p.m.
Strictly, no third party or opposition comment.
That's right, no comments except for those from Dear Leader and his commissar. Then, 8 days ago, another Labor spinner came along to feed the chooks.
The trial report reveals age assurance is practical and achievable.
Strictly embargoed with no third-party contact.
This bizarre arrangement, journalists agreeing to restrict their reporting in return for a so-called drop, dates back decades. Consecutive governments seeking to exploit their monopoly on information to further their own agenda, hoping their unfiltered message will be reprinted and then picked up by radio and TV. And as a shrinking press gallery has shed its policy specialists and the news cycle grown more frenetic, so the power imbalance has grown. But frustrated journos tell us it's only been in the past year that spinners feel so emboldened as to routinely put the no third-party diktat in writing. And it's not confined to Labor. Here's a drop from the Dutton campaign back in April.
Strictly embargoed, with no third-party comments.
In just that month, with the election bearing down, the drops from both sides turned into a rushing river of handouts about the Port of Darwin, home batteries, community language schools, penalty rates and domestic violence, all of which prohibited too much journalism from pesky reporters. There are plenty of real grenades set off by the Canberra Press Gallery and occasions on which the ban is ignored or even called out, like this blue ribbon effort by the Australian Financial Review, which alerted readers to the ruse.
The announcement prohibited journalists from contacting the opposition or third parties ahead of its release.
But in no other field of serious journalism would such an instruction be deemed tolerable. Even the doyen of the dark arts of media management, Sue Cato, despaired.
If you tried that outside the Canberra bubble, you could expect journos to tell you to self-procreate. My first response is, if you want to dictate a story, buy an ad.
Several big hitters in the Canberra Press Gallery have told us it's time for the convention to cease, including Peter Harcher, who said ministers making such demands
are conspiring to degrade news and journalism. They should stop. If they don't, reporters should ignore this unethical constraint and remember that their main responsibility is to their readers, viewers and listeners, not their sources.
President of the Press Gallery, the ABC's Jane Norman, said the no third-party comment demand by politicians and interest groups is an attempt to
control their media coverage, to shape or frame the first take of a story without the possibility of experts or critics weighing in.
She said the restriction creates a dilemma for the media in
having to decide whether the public interest in an embargo drop outweighs the necessity, at least in the first instance, to include other perspectives.
The Australian Financial Review's political editor, Phil Curry, says he writes context and the reaction he anticipates to an announcement into his stories as a kind of workaround, and that to not report these drops at all would often be a disservice to his readers.
Clearly, we would all prefer if no such demands were placed on drops, but that's the prerogative of the dropper. At the end of the day, we're not forced to write it.
This April drop, publicising a mental health program, resulted in news stories arrayed across the ABC, Nine and News Corp. But hold on, what's this? Third-party comments?
Mental Health Australia Chief Executive Carolyn Nikolowski described it as a
landmark investment that recognises the challenges the community is facing.
Former Australian of the Year Patrick McGorry said,
all Australians will deeply appreciate this groundbreaking commitment.
No, don't get up. These were only simulacra of the real thing, because those quotes were not the product of actual phone calls by reporters, but were, of course, supplied by the generous souls who staff Albo's office. But don't think for a minute anyone else was allowed to be interviewed.
No additional third-party comment.
We sought advice about the practice from the editors of most major mastheads in this country, and not a one put their head above the parapet. The opposition also declined to comment, and an advisor to the Prime Minister told us
We have the utmost respect for the Federal Press Gallery, which is why we work with them constructively on a daily basis.
Constructively being one way to put it. At a time when it's seeking to water down the Federal Freedom of Information Act, this is a terrible look for the Albanese government. But it's an even worse look for the Press Gallery, and we believe its members should refuse these shabby deals that tend to benefit not audiences, but the very centre of power those same journalists are there to scrutinise. To shrug and say, well, it's just the way things are, is to walk ever further down a path that cedes ever more authority and risks betraying an already frayed compact with readers.
In the Media Watch video you just watched, the host Linton Besser says the journalists should ignore instructions for stories from the Prime Minister's office. But as I show above, the CEOs of the media companies are so desperate to get financial support from the Prime Minister, it is the CEOs that would be telling the journalists to keep the Prime Minister and his office happy with their reporting and to do whatever the Prime Minister's office says to do. Conclusion. So, next time you read or watch the whole media report, the latest announcements from the Prime Minister or government, remember that the report was likely co-authored by Anthony Albanese's office, and any expert opinion supporting the announcement was likely supplied by Albanese's office. The rest of Australia's oil media have decided to follow in Murdoch's footsteps and are trying to influence and control the politicians as a source of profit, which Murdoch has successfully done for decades. Now, I know I am obviously biased, but that's why new media, including this YouTube channel and the Kangaroo Court of Australia website, are so important. The old media are failing to do their job and they're in bed with the government, from the CEO and board of directors down to the journalists. Anyhow, please do your bit and help shine a light on corruption and share this video on social media. And please subscribe and hit the like button and notification button. That way you get notified every time I publish a new video. And Kangaroo Court of Australia's independent media. I'm an independent journalist. I'm 100% crowdfunded from viewers like yourself. That's where I get my wage from. So please make a donation via PayPal and Patreon. You can donate any amount, $3, $5, $10, $15, $20, $30, $40, $50 a month, whatever suits your budget. It all helps out in a big way. Or you can do one-off donations. And you can go to my website and click on the donations page for other donation options. Other than that, thank you for your time and have a good day.